Hey guys, so in today's video, we are going to be making some of this nice yellow powder here, also known as Potassium Hexanitritocobaltate. To do it, it's pretty simple, and all we need to do is dissolve some cobalt, surround it with nitrites, and then surround that with some potassium ions. To start off this process, I measured out 20 grams of cobalt carbonate, which we made in a previous video, and then I measured out 20 milliliters of nitric acid to dissolve the cobalt carbonate in. This took a while to completely dissolve, but after some stirring, it was eventually all in solution. Then I measured out 50 milliliters of glacial acetic acid to help oxidize the cobalt from its 2+ state to its 3+ state, and added that to the beaker. Next, I started to measure out 95 grams of potassium nitrate and 63 grams of sodium nitrite. It would be best to just use potassium nitrite, however, I didn't have any of that on hand, so I had to split it up. And thankfully, the nitrate and sodium ions shouldn't get in the way of the main reaction. I could then just dissolve the salt in some distilled water, which got very cold, but after a little bit of stirring and some heating, it eventually dissolved. Now I got to enjoy this very satisfying precipitation reaction where the potassium hexanitritocobaltate forms as this fine yellow powder. Unfortunately for me, as I learned the hard way, this powder was too fine to easily vacuum filter, so I had to dry it some other way. I ended up putting it in a bottle to move it back to my personal lab to finish up this project. Alright, so now this is back in my lab where I'm going to try and clean and dry it. Unfortunately, when I did pack it up, it was completely full of liquid, and now you can see there's quite a little air bubble up there. The whole thing is also very inflated, much more than it was when I originally sealed it. And I'm assuming that is because of nitrogen dioxide gas that was created during the reaction. Alright, so now I'm outside, and I can begin taking the cap off. It is very pressurized. Oh, yep, there you can see the clouds of nitrogen dioxide. That's why I want to do it out here. I don't want to breathe that in. Alright, so now it is neutral. You can see some of the bubbles coming up to the surface. I wouldn't recommend sealing this in a closed container until it has been out for quite a while, so all the nitrogen dioxide can get out. But I will let that calm down and then take it back inside. Alright, you can see here the bottle, and there are still some nitrogen dioxide bubbles coming up, but it has definitely slowed down a lot, and it's been sitting here for a couple days. So I think I'm gonna start moving some of the liquid over into this and hopefully getting the solid out eventually. Alright, so I don't think I can bring that much more liquid over without some of this yellow solid here at the bottom getting moved over. So I'm now going to fill this bottle back up with water to hopefully dilute any salt that would be left in there, and then move on from there. Alright, so I just refilled it with water, and it looks just sort of like it did before, but hopefully now there shouldn't be as much salt in there, and after letting it settle again and taking off the top, should be more clean. And then this over here, this can kind of just be treated as waste, or you could try and recycle the sodium nitrate out of it, but I think I'm just going to set that aside for this video and focus on this yellow. Alright, so now that I've let this settle for a bit, I'm going to try and pour off most of the water from the top, and discard that. And then I'm going to try to get all of the solid out from the bottom. Alright, so I got out almost all the liquid I could without getting the solid out. Now I need to take this solid and put it into a separate beaker. Alright. So obviously there's a lot left in here. So I'm gonna rinse that with a little bit more water. And I can actually take this discarded water to pull that up. Alright, so I'd say that's probably the majority of the solid I can get out. So now I'm going to let that sit for a day and see if I can separate any water off the top of that. Alright, so the layers have separated. Now I can just take the water off the top. Alright, so that seems like all the water I'm going to get off the top there. There is some more. I'm not going to try and get all that. And now I need to set this somewhere where it can dry. Alright, so I have this dish here, and my goal is going to be to transfer all the solid from here into that dish. So first of all, I'm going to get all the particles suspended in the solution. Alright, so now I can take this discarded water from earlier and take a little bit of it to wash out the rest of this beaker here. Alright, so it's not perfectly clean, but I'd say it's clean enough, and this will be enough product for me. So now I'm just going to let that dry over like a week or something, and I'll get back to you when it's done. Alright, so this stuff has finally dried, and I just crushed it up a little bit so you can see it's become fairly fine powder. If I end up using this in like paint or something, I'll want to crush it up a lot finer. But for now, I think that's good for this video, and I will see you in the next one.